everyone. I'm Dustin Richardson from the Burbank International Film Festival, and today we continue our interview series Beyond the Frame with director, writer, and producer Matt Steinauer. Matt's feature film, a sci-fi thriller, Mind Thief, is one of this year's official feature film selections, which we're very excited to screen at the AMC 16, which is right there behind me. That's the exact theater we're going to be in. So, Matt, thank you so much for speaking with me today, and congratulations on everything. How are you?
Hey, doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Let's start with the basics here. Mind Thief. There's a
Yes.
lot going on in this film. It's a lot of fun. Could you please tell our viewers what this film is about?
I don't know. I don't know if any of us know. No,
Oh,
it's a sci-fi thriller, mind control, basically. Kind of a rear window setup, so you've kind of like looking at your neighbors and they're acting strangely, and you're just trying to get to the bottom of something, and our main character goes on quite a journey. Yeah. I need to get better with my log lines, I think,
I get you. Yeah, log lines, they're hard.
Yeah,
It's easier to write the film than the log line.
exactly. Exactly. Yes. We really wanted to kind of, roller coaster, have our tension and then release with some, humor here and there. And kind of most of the things I write, whatever genre I start with, end up being a little funny. So yeah, or, kind of a commentary type funny. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, I want to say I love that not only you directed the film, you also wrote it, which is awesome. That's like the dream job right there. I think filmmakers who direct their own story that they wrote, I mean, that's really powerful. And there's a lot of fun taking it from the imagination to
Yeah.
production and then finally onto the screen. I bet that's amazing. So I'm curious, what inspired you to write the story in the beginning?
This particular story, I was going through a lot of my old notes and stuff. And because I'll write like little, I want to, this little bit or this little line in a film, but I had this old bit about somebody waking up with dirt on their feet and then trying to figure out, am I sleepwalking? What's going on? Me and Angelique, the lead actress, we'd been watching a lot of movies and we watched Rear Window. We were just like, your place is actually quite, it's kind of her place that is the location. It is her, place in Studio City. So that location was like, oh yeah, you can see your neighbors. You're kind of like in a fishbowl, And so we're like, well, let's write something that we can actually pull off, together. That's what started it. We were watching, I think, Legion at the time, which kind of has like, mind control type stuff. And so that just kind of came together, just the kind of styles that we had. So we kind of storylined it together. And then I went off and wrote the first draft. Yeah, we're basically writing and producing partners. Yeah, on it.
Awesome. Very cool. Was this your first feature? Because I know you've done some short films.
I've done some short films. This is the first feature I'm proud of, I would say. Yeah. I did one coming out of college, no, this is the only one that I would like stamp of approval. Yeah, so I'll call it my first feature.
How close would you say you got to the vision you initially had when you're putting down on paper? What was that process like?
Good, because I've been a DP in the past and an editor currently. So I kind of I kind of know how the flow, like it doesn't always end up exactly, how you want it, but not necessarily it could be in a better way often. So I think you are making the film in the writing, but you do have to stay open to, changes and like, hey, we can, change this and actually, improve the product. And then once again in editing. So you kind of make the film 3 times. You want a great blueprint to make, a great film, all the beats and everything, but you have to be open, I think, to adapt. I mean, I love that everybody's going, they're, green screen and now the volume and all that stuff, but I like being in real locations, honestly. You know what I mean? Maybe that's a little old school, but I really do feel that it can improve the way you think in 3-dimensional space, and what you're going to do in it. And I think it also, actors, I think, kind of like being on real sets. I'm not, there's definitely a place for all the big, sci-fi stuff, or, big volume type stuff, but maybe a combination of the two. Is there something about like, that visceral response you get from, tangible humans and objects and everything. And if you don't have that, I do think there's a bit of a disconnect to the audience, at some level. So as long as they can grab onto like things, I think it does help the storytelling. Yeah.
And you have a great cast in Mind Thief.
Yeah.
Everybody did a great job. What was it like bringing the cast together and working with everyone?
Okay, so yeah, so we basically started out with Angie. So Judy Cook cast it. It was like a 3-month process. So I had written the first draft and we went immediately into casting. Angie was going through, there was like 2,400 self-submitted tapes on some of the roles, on some of the bigger roles. She went through all of them. I went through maybe half of them. And, we just whittled it down to our callbacks. It was pretty normal, but arduous way to do it, but I think it paid off. So during that period, that 3-month period, I'm writing the second draft because I'm kind of like, ooh, if that person, we're looking at like the chemistry between people and to Angie, so that they can all kind of live in a world together. And then I'm kind of writing the second draft, kind of like, okay, this person. And then once we cast it, then I started the third draft actually to kind of really hone in the script to each of their strengths and stuff. Like Jamie is a dancer, so we wanted to use her like physicality and just stuff like that. Yeah, so it was fun. Yeah, but it was long. It was a long process, but I think it was the way to go, honestly. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. So you're able to sprinkle in a little bit more due to the actors involved. That's perfect.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like going back to story. It's like, yeah, you write this, but then like Allison Martin, the next door neighbor, the one that gets punched, she's just so funny. I mean, just like we started walking through the door, I'm like, wow. So yep, rewriting, like kind of like we got to play to everybody's strengths, and still keep it in a good synergistic chemistry, for the story, moving it forward. So a lot of balls to juggle, but really fun to do. Yeah.
I'd just like to give a shout out to the man who walked into the swimming pool. I don't
Yes.
know his name. I don't know who he is, but
Jason
great.
Sims Pruitt. Yes.
There we go. Awesome.
So little story about that. We only had one suit, right? So we're like, and like the sun only hits that part of the swimming pool for like maybe like a 2-hour window, so because the buildings around it are tall. So we're like, okay, so me and him both practiced it in our underwear basically for like an hour before. We're like, okay, walk in, he watched me go in and he goes in and we're like, okay, we got it. And so it is a one take, him, right into the pool. Yeah, so
that's awesome. I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, was that a one take or did he actually pull him out and dry him off?
right. No, Jamie later on, she's like in the background, but she was out of focus. She got to do it 3 times, but her hair, I had to keep her out of, once we did the first take with her in focus, then her hair was like, it'd be like 2 hours to dry. I mean, she's, so then we made her out of focus with Angie in the foreground with her head down because her hair was already wet. So yeah, but it worked out. I think that was the way to, convey that. That and the dirt on the feet. The dirt on the feet I'd written. And then like when we were coming up with a story and kind of like, get springboarding it, that was one of the ones like, oh, that's what a neighbor could do. Just like literally walk straight into a pool and get some object, that's cool. That's, weird. And so, yeah, that was one of the very first kernels we had for the script. The one thing we left out, and it was just because the story didn't fit in the story, but what I'd wanted to do at one point, talking about the things that do get left out.
Yeah.
I planned a drone shot that was going to follow like that object going from like one person that was hypnotized to another person and I had it mapped out, but then I'm like, no, that gives away too much for the story comes first. And yeah, so that one I'll put in some future script of mine.
Yeah. There you go. Yes, put it in your back pocket.
Exactly.
Is there anything like you learned through doing this process?
Working with people, because I hate working with people. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
No, definitely. Everything, both in the writing and the actual execution of it in production and editing. Yeah, I definitely learned a few things. Learned what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. And sometimes those aren't what you would think, you know. We got shut down by COVID, right? For, you know, we started right before COVID, got like 2 days done and shut
Uh,
down for like 6 months. And, you know, kind of our own accord. We wanted to be, you know, abundantly, safe. We're like, so there's actually a fair amount of trying to keep the continuity of the actors looking the same,
yeah.
whether they change a haircut or they take a lot of sun and are now a different shade, etc. But you can get away with a lot of that stuff if the story, you know, if the through line of the story is pulling everybody, you can really get away with some things you wouldn't think of. And then other things you just can't, you know, you're just like, that'll just throw somebody. So it's like, when we were finally doing second unit at the end, it's like, oh no, we need to pick up this shot. We need to do this so that, you know, the audience will get from here to here. So yeah, it was a fun journey. It was really, yeah, it was great to learn a lot of things. Yeah.
The best teacher is just doing it, I
It
think.
really is. It really is. Yeah.
Let's step away from Mind Thief for a moment. I'm just curious, like, what inspired you to become a filmmaker?
I was at UCSD as an engineer many years ago. And so it was like 2 years in, and I took a VA course and a visual arts course in like intro to video. And so the funny thing is, I had as a kid always been writing. But I thought, oh, these are just going to be like stories in a book, and I had a very naive idea. I had no clue about filming. I grew up in San Diego and I had no clue about what Hollywood was about. So I thought, oh, you just write a good screenplay and you just hand it off to them and then they make a good film, right? That's how it goes. You know, there's nothing in between. Didn't even really know what directors were. And then I took this little visual arts course and I just loved it. I was like, wow. And also I had taken there had been a couple of internships that I'd been, and I realized that my life as an engineer would probably be in a cubicle working on a black box that became part of some bigger system. And that's cool. But I wanted to, you know, have something that I was connected to, you know, I guess artistically or whatever. So then I started learning about filmmaking. And luckily at UCSD, we were shooting film, black and white film. We had our own 16 millimeter processor on campus. So we got to process our own film and stuff. So it was really, you know, down and dirty, kind of gritty learning, you know, oh, okay, this shot is this long, you know, and how, you know, how it plays. So it was a fun education. And I just kind of fell in love with it. And then I came up to LA basically as a cinematographer at first.
Oh, that's great. So you
Yeah.
worked on some films as a cinematographer?
Yeah, some low budget sci-fi horror films for Lionsgate, stuff like that. Yeah, during the downturn in like 28 or 2008, that's when I think it was like Hellboy 2 Blood and Iron, the animated feature, kind of landed in the hands because I had edited something else for Sci-Fi or whatever, and they're like, hey, you want to do this animated feature? And they're like, 7 months in a row, you know. I'm like, really? All paid? You know, okay, great. I'll do it. And so that's why I shifted towards editing. The other thing is, I mean, I love production, but 12-hour days doesn't leave a lot of time for yourself, you know. So to get a job that, you know, where I get to you know, edit and actually have time to myself was good for writing. Yeah.
That's really cool. I love that you have a background in all
Mhm.
these different areas.
Yeah.
Must make you much
Other than
stronger.
like holding the boom, I pretty much know all the background jobs, you know, more or less. I can hold a boom though. I can do it, you know. But
Rather
yeah,
not.
rather not. I'm not the best at it. Also, I think I have a little too much like, you know how like you really got to hold it so that you don't get any like, you know, sound from the cord. Yeah. But other than that, I think I'm relatively qualified to, you know, because oh, that's right. Because while I was up in LA being a cinematographer, I was still a grip electric down in San Diego. So I did that for years. I would crash on people's couches up here, shoot a movie, go right back down to San Diego. I'm low man on the totem pole, grip electric, you know, throwing sandbags around and stuff. And yeah, it was educational. Mhm.
Were there any directors or writers that inspired you specifically once you started learning more about that?
Wow. I mean, I know this is, you know, Spielberg, you know, I mean, really, yeah. A bit of Hitchcock just in the, you know, for the suspense and learning the construction of not showing it sometimes, stuff like that. But Spielberg, I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark, I just grew up with, those films and stuff. So, oh, and also Sam Raimi. Because I do also, not in this film, but in other stuff I've done, I kind of have more of a crazy camera bend. And yeah, Sam Raimi is definitely one of my idols for that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, he's great too. Well, that's a great segue to a question I had to ask because I read your bio on Film Freeway
Oh,
and I noticed you had made one of your films was called Gumshoe,
yes.
which Francis Ford Coppola saw and said of the film, and I quote, funny, unique, and must have been hard to pull off. I'm wondering what's the story behind that? How did he
Oh,
see the
wow.
film?
Okay, so this is when it went to Telluride. And just to show you how little I know, I'm like, oh, it's in Telluride. Okay, that's great. I'm not gonna go to Colorado, just because I hadn't been to any festivals, right? The thing about Telluride is they only give you the schedule, like I think it's 24 hours before.
Wow.
They tell you you're in, but they don't give you the exact schedule. So I'm like, why am I going to go there for a 5-minute film that I did? So then I see the schedule and I'm playing like 5 times in front of Gia Coppola's first feature, his granddaughter. And I'm like, he just might be there. So I didn't even know that we had lodging. We had lodging, everything set up. But I threw a sleeping bag in the back of my Honda Pilot and start driving, late. And so I missed the first screening. And apparently that's when, because oh yeah, so my film was playing right in front of her feature. Uh, so I missed the first screening, and I get a call that I didn't get because I was in the hills of the mountains of Utah, kind of almost to Telluride, and he wanted to see me. Moonlight, Barry Jenkins. He was the one that programmed me. He was in charge of the shorts programs back then. This is 2013. I got to meet him a couple times. He was great. Yeah, I get there, and so I finally get to meet him at the end of the second screening in the Werner Herzog Theater, I think, up there in Telluride. And I go, hey, I'm, Matt. I had actually talked to Gia a little bit before, and she was cool, and she actually wanted to know what my location was, and stuff. And so then I talked to Francis, and he goes, and I didn't put this in, but he actually did say, I loved it. It was funny, it was unique, and it must have been hard to pull off. And then I kind of told him what I thought was the hardest part. And then like 5 minutes later, they were all off in their sedans, black, Suburbans to go off to Venice, I think it was their next festival. So it was like a big family thing. Off they went. But that was so when he said that, I was like, apocalypse now. I was like completely, I had nothing to say, it was, yeah, it was quite a, so that was the peak of my life. Everything's downhill from there. So yeah.
Well, I don't know. You might be meeting Tim Burton in a couple
I
weeks.
know, I know. I have met him once.
Yeah.
I'm sure he won't remember this. This is back when they were thinking, he was thinking of doing Superman, with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
So Face Off was still in theaters, and it's one of the first movies I ever saw in LA. So I go into this theater to see Face Off, and he like sat down like 3 rows in front of me. And this is like 10 minutes before the screening. So we did talk for like 10 minutes, and he was awesome. He was wonderful. He was like one of the few celebrities I was like really wants to talk to me. He was just a really nice guy. And then, so I think he was there just to look at a Nicolas Cage movie, before that Superman possibility. Yeah. That'd be so cool. I want to meet Tim Burton is definitely one of my, yeah, all time. I have some other screenplays that are like kind of more Beetlejuice, kind of crazy stuff. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, that's a great story, and that might be a interesting moment if he did happen to remember you. If you get
I
to
know, right? Yeah, this is a long time ago. Yeah.
Face Off, remember me?
Face Off, yeah. Empty theater. Because like literally when he came around in front of me, it was the hair. I'm like, that's
Mhm.
Tim Burton. I totally knew it, from hey, how's it going? Yeah. So
That is awesome. Yeah, I wish that Superman would have happened. That would have been interesting.
yeah, it totally, yeah, I think it would have changed the landscape of filmmaking.
Mhm. Here's a question I love to ask all our guests because everybody, like we were saying, you learn so much from short films, features, all of it, just doing it. You learn so much, and everyone has a different background around it. So I'm wondering what advice you would give to any aspiring filmmakers out there trying
Oh,
to find their place right now.
okay. I may not have the best advice. I definitely would say start with story, and start with what, moves you. Don't go with necessarily what the trends are or whatever, don't chase something. Do it really, emotionally, because you're going to have to be with this thing for a long time. So whatever project you're on. So, make it, something that you want to be with. As far as shooting style or thing, maybe I'm a little different. I like one camera. I think of everything in one camera, and great, have multiple cameras for stunts or things that aren't reproducible. Like we only did one camera when the guy stepped into the pool, but we should have had two. Anyhow, I like to, within the scene, within how you move your camera around, tell your story from a point of view, not just let's just cover and go all over the place. I like each shot to have a meaning, and like propel the story forward and just use that as your building blocks. And I do think it helps. I think it helps in how your mind creates something, because there's been times where I'm like, yeah, we'll just kind of shoot it all over the place, you know what I mean? And then that comes out like less focused, but when you really think about things and because in the end, we're basically showing one point of view, unless you're, cool Brian De Palma and doing split screen and whatnot, if you can do the camera for yourself a bit, doesn't mean you have to end up doing it, and edit a bit so that you understand the pieces that needed to come together to make a scene. Yeah, a little bit of background in that I think is invaluable. Good luck. We need all the new filmmakers. We need, different points of view, and really, yeah, need to change it up. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's next for you? Do you have any new projects or any work you'd like to mention?
Not really. I mean, I'm writing a few things. One is horror, one is a thriller. Can't really say anything about them, but we're in the mix trying to get stuff going. Yeah.
Gotcha. There will be more in the future.
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm hanging it up. I'm like, I'm done with this. This is fun.
Yeah. For those who won't be able to attend the festival this year, but would like to see Mind Thief, how might they be able to do that? Will it be getting released in any way soon, or?
We are not settled on, so we're still open yet. We're looking and trying to find the best home for it.
Great. Well, Matt, thank you so much for talking with me and taking the time to do that. And I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you at the festival. It's going to be fun.
Oh, cool. Thank you very much, Dustin. Cool.
And for viewers out there who will be attending the festival, if you would like to see Mind Thief on the big screen, and you can, it will be playing at the Burbank International Film Festival on Saturday, September 23rd, 9:00 p.m. and will be followed by a Q&A. And for tickets and more info, please visit burbankfilmfest.org.